so excited to bring this latest conversation to you with Celtics President of Basketball Operations, Brad Stevens. The Celtics coming off an NBA championship last season. I have absolutely no idea how Brad found the time to do this podcast, let alone give us a full hour. The conversation, so good, we broke it up into 2 different episodes. Also on this episode, Samantha Smith-Michael. Brad's legacy that we carry with us here is leadership and truly just being a good human and what that means to show up for other people. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Bulldogs and Butler fans, Brad Stevens, a true champion for change. Excited to have you here for part 2 of our conversation with Brad Stevens, the Celtics President of Basketball Operations. It was such a good conversation that we made it into 2 episodes. And if you haven't listened to the first part, be sure you go back and do that because Brad had so much incredible insight, not only into his basketball career, but also in terms of leadership and community and everything that goes into his success, both on and off the court. We also were joined by a special guest host, Samantha Smith-Michael. Lara, what I loved so much about this part of the conversation with Brad was his reflection on the moments that matter most. That it's actually not the rings and it's not the championships and not the titles, but it's the memories and the people that you take away from these times that truly make the difference and create those lasting legacies. I'm super excited for you guys to hear part 2 with Champion for Change, Brad Stevens. What do you think is special or unique about Butler and Hinkle and the environment that exists there? I mean, there's the people that you bring, but then there's also some kind of magic that gets sprinkled in, right? Somehow, and you mentioned IU, Purdue, and somehow Butler was able to kind of emerge as America's sweetheart who everybody loves. Doesn't matter where you went, you know. What is it about Butler that was able to become so special?
Well, we had good teams for a long time, and I say this all the time. I really believe that Barry, bringing and instilling the values of the program that really were shared by Dick Bennett when he was at Wisconsin Green Bay and the University of Wisconsin with Barry, and Barry took them and made them a part of who we were every day, and us trying to do our best to exhibit those and live by them and recruit to them and coach to them and make decisions by them was super impactful. And then, like I said earlier, the greatest differentiator is good people. And, those Butler teams that we were a part of, especially Sam, those years you were there, and Andrew was there. I mean, that's about as good as it gets. I get asked all the time about what's it feel like to win a championship. It feels absolutely no better than, making those runs with those guys. I think that is those guys, what they accomplished and what they did was super special. And then the way they represented the school, and the way they represented each other and continue to do so. I think it's just benefited. It's benefited all of us, but it's benefited Butler in, immense ways. So we were really lucky to be surrounded by them all.
Sam, you want to touch some more on your experience with Andrew and kind of the recruitment and building of those teams there? Andrew did always, when we would talk about his experience at Butler, it was all about the guys. And it was very rarely about anything that happened on the court. It was, the relationships that you guys built outside of that. And that was always extremely special to him. And I know for me, as we walked through his battle with cancer and then afterwards, those relationships just became even more valuable. When Andrew passed, I think I was just reaching for some piece of him somewhere. And I was just so fortunate to have so many little pieces of him because truly his time at Butler just made up so much of who he became and how he fought cancer and how he lived his life. And so I could certainly never say thank you enough to you for setting the standard so high for all those guys and instilling all those values in them, because I know for a fact that carries everybody forward. Brad, when you think back to that group and that special time, what do you think was unique as far as values and kind of the blood of that team? Could you sum that up?
Yeah, I think it's what we talked about, I think they were really committed to one another. I think there was a true selflessness and a true, like, we are here to win together. And I think there was a joy and an enjoyment of being around each other and playing with each other, right? I think that one of the things that I get asked a lot about this year with the Celtics is like, how are you going to go back through a long season and tackle each challenge? And it's a lot easier when you really love the guy next to you, and you really enjoy playing with the person next to you. And we had that at Butler in enormous ways. Sam, when you talk about Andrew and you talk about his impact, I mean, that was felt immeasurably on the court and in his time at Butler. And his level of improvement over those 4 years, by the way, was pretty dramatic and pretty cool when you really think back to it. But I think I think we always say when you win, or when you do something special as a team, you want to have reunions. That's the whole point. Otherwise, what's the point, right? The greatest legacy you can leave is that of a great teammate. And I think, Andrew was the definition of that. And a lot of the other guys on that team were too. And I think that, when that team gets back together, that whole team still gets back together. But there's a void, right? And there's not a void because somebody's choosing not to, or there's bad blood between teammates. There's a void because we lost one who mattered a ton too early. And I think that you can feel that, you can sense it, but there's also why, I think that their love for him is unconditional and I think that they're always a phone call away to each other. And to all of us. And that's what's cool about that team.
You talk about his improvement, which, yes, is very notable from freshman to senior year. Coach, I think about your eulogy a lot, that you very graciously did at Andrew's service. And I remember one of the things you said was that, he taught us to be ready for our time. And so it's just crazy to think about that manifesting on the court. When we had that first championship run. And I remember from Andrew's perspective, he said, Coach, like, you got to be ready. If I call you, you got to be ready. And I think that was a moment for him that he realized he had to step up and be ready to hold the standard and hold the line. And so what's beautiful is to see him continue to be ready always. And we don't know our time and we don't know where life is going to take us, but Andrew was always ready because he lived every day as a good human, and he lived every day to its fullest, and he lived every day genuinely and just always ready to your point, just to be a great teammate.
Yeah, he was always that, and he got a lot better, and he became one of our best players. Started his sophomore year, but then became one of our better players his junior and senior year. But the on the court part of that, Sam, that for anybody listening that doesn't remember this, is he wasn't really playing at all as a freshman. And basically, like, we were getting ready to play Kansas State, who was huge in the Elite Eight, and he hadn't played in the tournament at all. And, Matt Howard got his traditional 2 fouls in 2 minutes, like he always did. And then Avery looked like he was going to foul out as well. And so it was like, Andrew's going to get an opportunity. But I remember we kind of thought that was coming, and we said something to him before that game, like, hey, you just have to be ready. And, he goes in the Elite Eight game and plays a good role for us and helps us win, and you go to the Final Four. And then the next year, he's starting, and, Hopkins has a week leading up to the Sweet 16 that kind of raises everybody's eyebrows in practice. And, you kind of walk up to him and say the same thing. And here's this example standing right next to you, and Andrew Smith that did it last year. And then he goes in the Elite Eight and helps us go to a Final Four. And those are pretty special when you think about it. But that's, obviously when you're talking about, cancer and life, and those are a lot more important than these small basketball moments. But there is a parallel, and like, you're always preparing to impact as well as you can. And he did a really good job of that in a short amount of time.
He did. When I think about, I think about pretty much every day what if I could take one thing away from Andrew and implement it in my life, what would that be? One of the things that I have found to be the most beautiful and wonderful things is whenever I talk to somebody, whether they knew him for 5 years or legitimately 5 seconds, they just talk about how genuine and attentive he was, and that he cared so much genuinely about what you were saying and how much, what you were saying and what was going on with you. And to a fault, because I remember when we would get a rare date on a Saturday because coach didn't call practice or study table or something. And people would come up to him and it would be 30 minutes later and Andrew is still sitting there very kindly and just nodding his head and being very involved with them. And so I always think about how he made people feel. Coach, if you could take one thing from Andrew and implement it in your daily life, what would that be?
Man, he had a real motor for work too. Like, I think that he was a really good person who was a really good teammate who was really tough. I'm not sure that I thought he was as tough as he was when he first got there. And then by the time, we were sitting in that hospital room, he might have been the toughest person I've ever been around. Right. And I think that, and I don't say that like a physical nastiness. I think more of just the mental fortitude to tackle anything, the daily commitment to like doing hard things. And then it showed itself as a player as he got older. But I think that, he just had a toughness that was pretty unique.
When you talk about, being ready to show up and also, the characteristics that make for a good person and good people. I mean, Brad, I think it was pretty well documented that, you missed a Celtics game to be there with Andrew and Sam in his final days and, made the celebration of life a priority. And you're here with us today and you continue to be present with the Joel Cornette Foundation. You continue to find opportunities to be ready to show up when the opportunity presents itself or is asked of you, I guess. And talk to us about how you, really find the time to prioritize and to be there for those causes and the people that matter to you.
Well, I think first of all, we all should find the time to participate and be helpful in good causes, right? Whenever we can, and certainly what we're most passionate about and what we're most interested in doing to help, advance everything. But I think that it's, just even more so when you've been a part of a team with someone. I think that's, when you're a part of a team and team matters to the extent that it's mattered in all of our lives and in all of our careers. I don't think when someone from that team needs something or when someone from that team asks you to do something or it represents someone from that team, you just do it. And that's the cool part about being a part of sports. It's a cool part about being a part of a team. And that's why, we talk all the time, and I said this earlier in passing, but we talk all the time here about your greatest legacy is being a great teammate. All the individual awards, even all the collective and team awards, it's all fleeting, and to be honest, it's never going to be enough, right? Right when you get something, you'll want more, and it's just the way that mindset works, right? But at the end of the day, 20 years from now, we will all be done with this segment of our lives, whether as a player or, maybe somebody will still be coaching. I will not be doing anything this tough in 20 years, I hope. But I think that ultimately, that's what it's about. What's your greatest legacy is, what kind of a teammate were you? How did you treat people? And so, and I think you have to extend that, right? Doesn't mean you're always going to be available for every little thing always, but you try to make time whenever you can. And, Andrew and Joel were really important to us, but also just really enjoyable teammates. Like, just loved them both. I wasn't a part of Joel's recruitment, but I was a part of his last 3 years at Butler, and, love him, love his family, and try to help whenever we can. And obviously the same with Andrew.
Brad, as an Indiana gal, a proud Hoosier, you certainly converted me to being a Butler basketball fan. I remember being, so in awe of those runs and just admiring your teams. And I joke with my own college coach from IU that she had no idea when she signed a gal from New Albany, Indiana, that she was going to have to coach her well beyond the 4 or 5 years that I was at IU, because I continue to text her and ask for advice and do all of these things many, many years removed from my college track career. So I said, you actually signed a girl for like the next 20 to 30 years. How significant is that, and how true is that, especially when you have projects like this and the legacies that Andrew and Joel have established well beyond their run as college athletes?
That's really fun. That's like when you talk about like time of the day, when you get a message from, one of those guys at Butler, or you get a message from an early player with the Celtics, or whatever the case may be, or obviously an opportunity to be a part of this or be a part of the Joel Cornette Foundation. I think those are things that are, those are in a lot of ways, what you should be doing, and also like an enjoyable part of the job to think back what those people meant to you and mean to you and what you can do to help, right? So I love it when all of those people reach out. And it's one of the reasons why I was talking about earlier. It's why you feel a void when you're around all those teams from the early 2000s and Joel isn't there, or you're around all those teams from the 2010-11 era and Andrew's not there, right? Because most everyone else is. And, I think that that's the hard part about these things. And so you're drawn to help even more, obviously.
Well, I can tell you from a, day-to-day boots on the ground Project 44 perspective, yours and Tracy's support and involvement have meant so much to us over the years, and just really appreciate all that it is that you do, and more importantly, who you are for us.
Well, thanks. It's been fun. It's been really fun for us to watch, to turn on a college game and see the Project 44 shirts, right? To see, obviously Micah took it to Penn State. I don't know if they did one at Notre Dame last year, but they should. Micah, I'm sure Micah would do anything he can to help. And I know that one of his walk-ons would do everything he can to help. I know that. And so, beyond that, and then I saw Purdue was wearing them. I think, did Indiana wear them one year?
Indiana.
I know Butler obviously has it every year. Like, it's so meaningful to see that and to see the way it's spread and to see your impact. And, obviously when the story with Chase came out, when he donated and really obviously, helped the young kid that he helped, like, I just think that that's so special, that impact. And so it's cool that people are continuing to do it, and hopefully anything that we can do to help kind of get the word out, to register and get on that thing and help somebody else is, we'd like to do.
One of the things that we do in each episode, inspired by, Sam, obviously better than anybody, Andrew's spirit animal, and our spirit animal is the moose. And, we get a lot of big moose energy around here. It kind of shows up in a lot of different places. Sometimes we're really excited to see it, and sometimes we want to maybe to just move out of the way a little bit and let us, move on from a bigger, 44 points, for example. He always shows up during our Butler game in that sense. But if you had to characterize yourself in a spirit animal, what is that?
Oh my God. I don't even.
Well, I'm going to add to that. I'm going to add to the question. I want to know what you think yours would be, and what Tracy would say your spirit animal is.
I don't even know. Maybe I'm not as well versed in the spirit animal world. Yeah, I don't even want to go there. I don't know. I'll let somebody else, as usual in the world I live in, I'll let somebody else decide that for me. I just really won't care what they say. But I don't know. I don't know what Tracy would say. Probably one of our dogs, but that's
as good as any. I can't imagine a better role than probably being one of
one of the Stevens dogs, probably have a pretty good life over there.
Well, we had one that lived to 17, and then now we have another one that's 4, and maybe I shouldn't say that because they're pretty.
Would you be the 17 or the 4-year-old?
They're pretty needy and they're pretty annoying, and maybe I should have avoided that. But
so Tracy's like, yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, I'm the high maintenance one, I guess.
Well, Brad, thank you again so much for your time with us today. And again, just everything that you continue to represent, for Project 44, but really just out there in the world. And, we talk about spotlighting champions for change and the importance of being about something bigger than ourselves. And I can't think of anybody who embodies that more than you and all the folks who you have, embraced into your circle and network and, really live that day in and day out. So thank you for all that you do.
No, thank you. It's the best part about being on a team, so I'm happy to see all the great work you're doing and appreciate being asked.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Finding 44. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Follow Project 44's mission at project44.org and find us on social media at Join Project 44.